All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, really deep into the history of Manchester United.
A club that's truly iconic, recognized around the world.
You've given me a ton of great material for this one, and it's clear Manchester United is more than just a football club. It's a story, a history that's really woven into the fabric of the game itself, both here in England and
You
globally.
can definitely say that again.
So our mission today is to explore those pivotal moments, the ones that really shaped Manchester United.
Yeah, those key turning points.
And to try and understand what it is, that enduring spirit that makes this club so iconic, so resilient.
Absolutely. And I think just looking at the scope of their journey, I mean, you've sent me a lot to look at here. From their very, very humble beginnings, those industrial roots, to becoming this global powerhouse. It really is remarkable. A story full of incredible highs and some really, really deep lows.
Well, let's start right at the beginning, shall we?
Let's.
Back in 1878. Now, the club, of course, wasn't the Manchester United we know and love today.
Different name entirely.
It was actually called Newton Heath LYR Football Club. And that LYR, it stands for Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. So it was the team for, well, the railway workers.
Grounded in the community. You can't get much more working class than that, can you?
No, it really speaks to the origins of so many of these major clubs.
Absolutely. They were essentially community hubs,
Hmm.
a reflection of that strong industrial spirit of the time. And like you say, so many of today's, the giants of the game have similar roots. It makes you wonder how those ties, those early ties to that very specific railway community might have shaped the club's initial identity and fan base. But like a lot of clubs in those early days, Newton Heath, well, they faced some pretty serious financial problems.
They did. And in fact, those struggles, they were so severe that they almost sank the entire club.
Yeah, it's a story we hear repeated so often in the early days of football clubs. The finances were often very precarious.
And then comes 1902, a real turning point. Enter John Henry Davies. He was a local brewery owner, and he steps in, essentially saves the club from financial ruin.
A bit of a white knight then.
Yeah, you could say that. And along with that rescue comes a new name, of course, Manchester United. It makes you think, how such a seemingly simple act, like renaming a club, can signal such a huge shift in direction and ambition. So what do you think Davies was hoping to achieve beyond just rescuing them financially with that change?
I think it was a very deliberate and strategic move. It wasn't just about, slapping on a new coat of paint. By calling them Manchester United, he was signaling a real intention to broaden the club's appeal, to move beyond just that railway worker base and really position them as a team for the entire city of Manchester.
Yeah, for all of Manchester.
Exactly. So it was about cultivating a larger, more diverse fan base. It was about laying the groundwork for future growth. And ultimately, I think it was about setting them on that path towards global recognition.
So, new name, a healthier bank balance, and the club starts to really establish itself in those early years of the 20th century. Now, it wasn't necessarily the era of, the relentless trophy wins that we associate with Manchester United today.
Right, different time.
But these were still foundational years. They were building a reputation, establishing their place within the English game, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Those early decades, you're right, they might not have been overflowing with trophies, but they were absolutely crucial. They were forging an identity, a style of play, and that deep connection with the people of Manchester.
And then we move into the period after the Second World War.
Big changes in society and in football, too.
Huge changes. And of course, the arrival of one of the most significant figures in Manchester United's history, Sir Matt Busby. He takes over as manager in 1945.
A true giant of the game.
He really is. For many people, his name is synonymous with the rise of Manchester United as a dominant force in English football. And for good reason. I mean, this guy built a dynasty.
So what was it about Busby's approach that had such a profound impact, not just on Manchester United, but on the English game as a whole?
Well, he was more than just a brilliant tactician. He was a visionary. He built a whole philosophy around the club, around nurturing young talent, and he had this very specific idea of how the game should be played. Attacking football, exciting football.
And that's where the Busby Babes come in.
Exactly. This incredibly gifted group of young players all coming through the ranks. And they weren't just winning. They were winning with style and panache. It really captured the imagination of the entire country. It was a new era for Manchester United and, frankly, for English football as a whole.
And then 1968, another huge milestone.
Yeah.
Manchester United become the first English club to win the European Cup.
What an achievement. It must have been a monumental moment, not just for the club, but for English football on that European stage. So what do you think that victory signified at the time?
Well, for years, English clubs had often struggled to compete with some of the big continental teams. Busby's United, they showed that an English team could not just compete, but they could win at the very highest level of European football. It changed the perception of English football. It gave other English clubs the belief that they could challenge for European glory.
And this is a very difficult subject to talk about, but within this incredible journey, this incredible success, there's this devastating tragedy, the Munich air disaster in 1958, the loss of 8 young, incredibly talented players.
A tragedy that's still felt deeply today.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to comprehend the scale of that loss and the impact it must have had on the club, the fans, the entire football world. I mean, the Busby Babes, they were seen as the future.
It was a catastrophic event, a moment of profound grief that really reached far beyond just the footballing world. The Busby Babes, as you say, they were seen as the future of Manchester United and, arguably the future of English football. You have to wonder, how do you even begin to rebuild after such a loss?
It's hard to imagine. But so Matt Busby, who himself was seriously injured in the crash, he somehow found the strength to rebuild. And just 10 years after Munich in 1968, they were champions of Europe. That's a testament to the resilience of the club, the spirit of Manchester United. It's almost unparalleled in sporting history. So what do you think fueled that incredible comeback? What drove them?
It's hard to pinpoint one thing. I think it was a combination of factors. Busby's incredible leadership, the incredible support from the city of Manchester, and the unwavering belief of everyone involved with the club to not just recover, but to reach the pinnacle of European football. That says everything about the spirit of Manchester United, doesn't it? It cemented their status as a truly legendary club.
Now, after that incredible era under Busby, the club entered what you might call a transitional period.
The 70s and 80s.
Right, the 70s and the 80s. They were still a major club, but perhaps not the consistently dominant force they'd been under Busby. They had some success, won a couple of FA Cups, but no league titles. What were some of the key challenges facing the club during this time? What made it so difficult to maintain that level of success that they had achieved under Busby?
Well, I think, like you said, it was a period of transition. It wasn't that they were suddenly a bad team. They were still a force to be reckoned with. It's just, English football was changing, becoming more and more competitive. And perhaps they were missing that singular figure, that driving force that Busby had been.
And that brings us to 1986 and the appointment of Sir Alex Ferguson.
Now, there's a name.
He became manager in November 1986. But it wasn't all plain sailing at the start, was it? He inherited a club with a huge history, but, they hadn't won the league in almost 20 years.
A lot of pressure on his shoulders.
There was. So what do you think convinced the club to stick with him during those first few years when, the trophies weren't exactly rolling in?
Well, I think there was a feeling, even in those early years, that he was building something special. Even if the results weren't always there. There must have been a belief in his vision, in his methods. They could see the potential, even if it wasn't translating into immediate success. I mean, thankfully, they did stick with him.
And they were rewarded. 1993, they finally win the league title. It was their first league title in 26 years, and it felt like the start of something truly special. So what kind of impact did that single title have on the trajectory of the club, on the psychology of the club?
I think it was absolutely massive. It broke that long drought, and it instilled this incredible winning mentality within the whole club. The players, the staff, the fans, everyone. It gave Ferguson the platform, the validation he needed.
And then the trophies started coming in.
Didn't they?
Under Ferguson, Manchester United won 38 trophies, 13 Premier League titles, 5 FA Cups, 2 Champions League titles. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. So what were the key ingredients, the core principles that underpin this incredible period of dominance under Ferguson? How did he do it?
It's hard to sum it up in a few words, but I think a big part of it was his ability to adapt, to constantly rebuild successful teams. He was ruthless, He never let complacency set in. He had this incredible eye for talent, both in terms of bringing in new players and developing young players through the academy. And he built a culture of winning. He instilled that famous never say die spirit into his players.
And during this era, some of the greatest players in the history of the game wore the Manchester United shirt. Eric Cantona, Ryan Giggs, David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Roy Keane, the list goes on and on. These are iconic names in world football. How important were these individual players in achieving that collective success?
They were vital, absolutely crucial. But I think what Ferguson did so brilliantly was that he didn't just assemble a collection of superstars. He built a team. He created a structure where these incredible talents could flourish, but within a framework of discipline and teamwork. Those players, they weren't just brilliant footballers, they were leaders. They had that winning mentality, that desire that Ferguson demanded.
And then, of course, there's 1999.
The treble.
The treble, winning the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League, all in the same season. It's a kind of achievement that, well, it puts you in a very, very exclusive club. There aren't many teams who have achieved that. What made that particular Manchester United team so special, so capable of achieving something so unique, so historic?
I think it was a perfect storm. They had incredible depth in every position.
Yeah.
You had experienced players, seasoned winners, mixed with young, hungry talent. And they had this unshakable belief in themselves, this ability to win games even when they weren't playing their best. Think of those dramatic comebacks in the FA Cup semifinal and the Champions League final. Just incredible.
And then came 2013, and Sir Alex Ferguson retired.
The end of an era.
It really was. And since his departure, the club has been in a period of transition, trying to adapt to life without the man who had shaped them for so long. We've seen a number of high-profile managers come and go: David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ralf Rangnick. What do you think has made it so difficult for them to replicate that level of consistent success that they enjoyed under Ferguson?
Well, replacing a figure like Ferguson was always going to be almost impossible. He was so influential. His presence was felt in every area of the club. And the landscape of football has changed too. It's more competitive than ever. There's more money in the game, more clubs with the resources to challenge for the top honors. So it's not an easy job, is it? Building a team capable of dominating like that Manchester United team did under Ferguson.
Since Ferguson left, they have won some trophies, of course: the FA Cup in 2016, the League Cup, and the Europa League in 2017. But that consistent challenge for the Premier League title, for the Champions League, it hasn't really been there, has it?
No, it hasn't. And I think those trophy wins, they were important. They show that the club can still compete, can still win things. But that real consistency, that ability to challenge for the biggest honors year after year, that's the missing ingredient, isn't it?
And now they're in another rebuilding phase. According to what you've sent me, Ruben Amorim is the current manager. A young manager with a good track record, but a big job on his hands.
He certainly does.
But there are some exciting players in the squad: Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, some big money signings. The ambition is clearly there to get back to the top. What do you think are the biggest challenges and opportunities facing Manchester United in this latest rebuild?
It's all about finding the right blend, isn't it? Integrating those new players, creating a style of play that suits them. And of course, you need that winning mentality. It takes time, and there will be bumps along the way, but the potential is there. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world. They have the resources, and they have that incredible fan base.
Looking at all of this, some of those interesting historical details really stand out. Being the first English club to win the European Cup, the record for most FA Cup final appearances, even if they haven't won it as many times as Arsenal. And then there's Old Trafford, opened in 1910, damaged during the Second World War, but still standing strong.
A truly iconic stadium.
It is. And then there's that global fan base. I mean, millions and millions of fans all over the world. It really speaks to the history and the global reach of this club, doesn't it?
Absolutely. These aren't just statistics. They're a reminder of the long and storied history of Manchester United. Old Trafford in particular, it's more than just a football stadium, isn't it? It's a symbol of the club, of its history, of its resilience. And those fans, they're the lifeblood of the club. They're the ones who create that incredible atmosphere.
So as we come to the end of this deep dive into Manchester United, from those humble beginnings as a railway workers team to global giants, I think one thing is clear. This is a club defined by its spirit, its resilience, and its ability to overcome adversity. And it's a reminder that football is about more than just trophies. It's about the people, the passion, the connection between a club and its fans.
Couldn't put it better myself. I mean, it's a story full of drama, isn't it? Highs and lows, moments of triumph and tragedy. But through it all, that spirit of Manchester United seems to shine through.
So looking back at the journey of Manchester United, what aspect of their evolution, of their story, resonates most strongly with you? What's the thing that really sticks out?
I think for me, it's that ability to overcome adversity,
Right.
whether it was those early financial struggles or the Munich air disaster, or even just those periods where they weren't winning trophies. They always seem to find a way to bounce back, to come back stronger. It's a testament to the people involved, the players, the managers, the fans, and that spirit, that resilience is really inspiring.
Absolutely. Well, this deep dive into Manchester United's history, it reveals so much, doesn't it? It's not just about a successful football club. It's a story about resilience, about ambition, and about the impact of key individuals who have shaped the club over generations. And it makes you think, how do these stories, these moments, continue to shape the club today? How do they influence the club's identity and its future? It's something to ponder, isn't it? Anyway, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining for this fascinating deep dive into the history of Manchester United.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, take care.